Welcome to the Leadership and Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love. I'm really humbled and honored to have my very first interview with Micki Woods. I was actually on her podcast about a year ago, so if you want to go back and check that out, we're also going to put that in the meeting notes below. She was just a great podcaster, and she's actually inspired me to do this. And when I came up with the idea of the Leadership and Love podcast, literally she was the first name, the first person that popped in my head. I thought, I want to interview Micki. Brief introduction for Micki. Micki owns her own marketing company. She has Micki Woods Marketing, and she really specializes in the collision repair industry. And I thought she would be the perfect guest because she's got this whole life. And in part of her life, not only from our relationship, but the things I've watched her post on social media and out in the world, she's got a deep love. And so, Micki, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Louie. That's so sweet. You almost made me cry. The fact that I inspired you and I was the first person you thought of. Wow, what an honor and such
Yeah,
a
truly.
privilege to be here.
Well, you're quite welcome, and truly, you were the first name, and I saw your face, and I thought, well, this has got to be a God thing.
Yes.
So, you do a couple of things. Tell us what else you're involved in. I know you've got your own podcast. If you could kind of let everybody know the name of your podcast, and also a little bit about the Collision Cocktail Hour.
Yeah. So, yes, to back up a little bit more, I'm a former body shop owner myself, and that's what kind of started me in the industry. I now have Micki Woods Marketing, and then I started the Body Bangin podcast during COVID when that hit because I really felt like shops were out there struggling. And you're talking about doing things from a place of love. I call it my heart project. Doing the Body Bangin podcast, it was a heart project. It was something the Lord put on my heart heavily. Shops were in need. There was a lot of information, a lot of fear. And so it was something that I could do to help the industry. So I started the Body Bangin podcast. That's been going on for a couple of years now. And then also, I do something called the Collision Cocktail Hour. It's not just me, I'm part of a team. We put it on once a month. It's a free resource for the whole industry for shop owners to come together. And we just talk about hot topics in the industry and how different shops are doing things and navigating struggles and celebrating wins. And it's been a real blessing for the people that have been on it month over month. And then I also am a host of the Guild 21 calls that OEC now provides. And we used to do those monthly, but now they're more quarterly. And again, talking with some leaders in the industry for that. So typically now we're focusing it more on the manufacturers coming on and speaking to shops and do some different speaking engagements. And I'm probably leaving out some things, but yeah, I'm very around. I'm in a lot of things.
Well, you truly are. And so, the first thing I've been wanting to ask you specifically is, what would your advice be to our listeners about how to lead your marketing or lead in your industry with love?
That's a great question. So, leading in marketing, well, marketing, if we're talking about marketing your body shop in love, I really think it comes down to, and this is something that I teach because I also do trainings and coachings and I do CSR trainings for shops. And I always say it comes down to remembering why we're doing what we're doing. Yes, we're fixing a car and yes, we want to do it properly, but for what reason? And it's really to be a service to the person, that human that we're putting in that vehicle. And we're there to help them and support them and care for them in their time of need. And when we go back to that place and we put things into that perspective, it helps everybody do their job so much better. And you really then differentiate yourself from the other businesses in your market because everybody else is so busy processing that when you are caring about the person and like you're saying, leading in love, that heart posture is really what it is that we're talking about. It's the difference maker because people feel it. They know you care. They know you're not just doing a job, you're caring for them. And once you can relate to them and care for them in that space, Now you have a customer for life. And now, if something were to go sideways and you communicate with them, they're much more understanding because they know you have their best in mind. So I would say that's first and foremost, is remembering why we are doing what we're doing, and then let that heart posture then exude through the marketing efforts that you're doing, no matter what that is. We're remembering that we're not just doing a job. Why are we doing what we're doing? And then letting that be the messaging behind everything that you do.
You know, that's very profound. And I like that a lot. You know, oddly enough, the mission statement at Sharp Auto Body, one of my companies, is we're here to help people who've been traumatized by an accident get through the process as quickly and easily as possible. And I think you touched on something that's very powerful, and that is keeping the people you want to serve in mind.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to our listeners in terms of that messaging in the marketplace? How would you suggest that they market that they're really about service and caring?
Yeah, a couple of ways. So I think your actions will speak louder than words. So a lot of people have great slogans that should get you in, bringing you back to the rhythm of life, like all these
Yeah,
great things. Uh,
yeah.
but then if you get there and the actions don't match up, you can say whatever you want to say and have the catchiest slogan, but it really comes down to let your actions speak, let your actions lead. So I really think it can't just be something that we're saying. It has to be something that we're living. And that's really the key in life, but in business as well. And then that then organically helps because people feel it. They go talk to other people. Oh, have you heard of this shop? Have you heard of that shop? Have you heard about these people? Look what they did. So there's that. And marketing isn't just digital marketing. Marketing isn't just putting up a banner. These are pieces of marketing. Marketing is also the experience that your guest has. That is part of your marketing. So I think it starts there. But then the other place is be thinking about what is like a catchphrase? What is the really what is the crux that you want to build this business off of? And this could be a great task for you as an owner or a manager listening to this to have a team meeting and you guys all decide what is our brand? What is this that we want to live by, that we want to start putting out there? Whatever that is, then that's what we will live out. So when people come here, that message matches. Is it uh, every guest is treated like family? Is it, and that's what you live. So that's what you promote. That's on your website. That's on a banner. That's on your business cards. And then when you come in, you live that out. That is a great marketing strategy, but it really has to start at the heart because if you don't want to be pushing that message out, every guest is treated like family and they get treated like crap. You're like, wow, you must treat your family like crap because this was awful. So it all needs to match up. But yeah, I think having a slogan, like a mission statement of sorts, every company should have one. And if you don't, this is a great opportunity right now after you listen to this podcast, a takeaway, have that meeting with your team, create some type of mission statement. And what is that brand? What is that slogan that we want to put out? And that's what we're going to live. That's what we're going to do. We're going to abide by this because this is who we are. And this is how people are going to know us by. So I think that could be very, very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that ability to keep that consistent through everything is really, really foundational. And I think most people lack that consistency. I also think that one
Mhm.
of the things you touched on, and I'd like to ask you this, is how would you recommend that people keep their branding, that messaging, consistent and similar? I'd like you to explain a little bit more as well. Expound on the mission statement and why that's so critical.
Okay. So brand awareness and brand fluency, cont- so it's continuous through everything that you're doing, is very important because you think about companies like Pepsi. Pepsi's changed their logos through the years, but it's been a morphing. But it always, when they have it, it's the same. Like right now, Pepsi is the blue and the red, the kind of wavy circle. We see it, we know it, it's Pepsi. If they changed it every month, you wouldn't know any different. But we see Pepsi over and over and over again. So we all know Pepsi and those colors. Now, for a body shop, it's the same thing. I mean, marketing is marketing no matter what industry you go into. Whatever you're going to have, that's what you do. And that's where you put it everywhere so that people get to know that brand. And what happens is shop owners get bored with what they have, so they feel like, oh, I should change it up to keep it exciting, but they lose their branding with it. And that needs to be a thought process. So if you are a shop that's been in business for a multitude of years, if you want to do a switch up of your logo and you want to do something that's like we call it a branding refresh, a logo refresh, that's fine because we'll stick with the what you had and adjust it. Example, Pepsi. Pepsi has changed their logo throughout the years and it's gone through branding changes, but they don't change their brand until they're a known brand. So you have to wait until you're solidified in the market before then you start farting around with it and changing the colors. And Pepsi's always been the red and blue. It's been some variation of those things, but it has stayed there's been consistency in the change, if that makes sense.
It does, because it's always been the circle, to your point.
Well, at one point in time, it was written out in script, Pepsi Cola. And then they ended up going to a circle eventually. But again, it's been a morph of this is how it was known. And then it switched over to this. And then that's what it was known as. So for shops out there wanting to do something different, if you've had the same thing for so long and you feel like, man, this is an old font style, I feel like this logo's dating me because it may be. And that is something to think about. Use a graphic designer that knows how to refresh something without losing the brand completely, if that makes sense. And then whatever you switch to, that's what you stick with for a consistent amount of time. And you were even talking about color changes. The only time that color changes, that you want to do a color change on your logo, is if you're on like apparel. For example, like, you're wearing, for people that are watching on YouTube or a visual version of this podcast, you have a gray sweater with a yellow and blue logo. Well, what if you have a yellow sweater? Well, now how does that work? Okay, well, maybe you would do an all black logo and an all white logo. So on apparel, or if you have a certain background that you have to work with because of whatever the platform is or your apparel, okay, that's different. But otherwise, you're always using the same colors, the same logo, everything the same. Unless you have to modify it a little bit different for like, a business card versus letterhead versus something else. You may have a slight tweak of layout, but you're really being really consistent with that. Did that make sense? In my brain, it made sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect
Okay.
sense because I think people think, well, I'm doing business cards, it's going to be different, and my letterhead's going to be a little different.
Mhm.
And to your point, and I think it's there's a big challenge for a small business, to use your example of Pepsi. Pepsi can throw billions of dollars in an ad campaign, and they go top of mind because they spend that billions of dollars on that ad campaign. What would your advice be to small businesses, body shops, and other small businesses? What would your advice be to them to try and get to that top of mind in their market, knowing that they're not looking to build a national brand, but a regional or local brand?
Yeah, very, very good question. So I think this is really important, and I'm glad that you asked it. A lot of companies think if I exist, if I create a website, if I create a Facebook page, the people will come. Well, no. People need to find you. They need to know you exist. So we've got to get you out there. And that is what we call brand awareness, is getting your brand out there. So I would say it starts really grassroots. I was talking with a shop owner just yesterday on a call. Her and her husband just opened up a shop. They're very small. And she said, how do I grow my business? I don't have big money. I don't have thousands of dollars to bring people in. And my advice to her is the same advice I give to everybody that I even took myself when I started my shop, is grassroots marketing, getting very involved in your local community. So, and making sure that brand is on everything. And you're smiling, so I know that means you probably did the same. uh, so I recommended to her, same that I would recommend to your listeners. Let's say if you have kids in school, get involved in those schools, because parents that put their children in that school, they want to help support other children's families that are at that school. So you can be a sponsor in a yearbook. When they do a walkathon, you can get a banner. If they do a little holiday fun fair. You can put a table up and you can give away toy cars with your logo on the side of them. But again, having your brand everywhere and all those things that you do, and you don't have to spray paint it, spray gun it to the wall. I always say laser like approach. Be in one place a lot consistently and you will see something from it versus trying to be everywhere to everyone. You'll get back very little. But if you're really careful with what you do and you go in hard and heavy in one space or in two spaces, you'll see the results from it. And then that branding, because you're there, you're top of mind, you're present, even if it's to a small group of people, now you develop that loyalty, that following, because we don't make decisions based off of facts. We actually make decisions based off of emotions. So if we're emotionally connecting with these people and we're present, we're with their children and we're friendly, we've got this great slogan. We care for you. We care for your car. Are you kidding me? Like this is such a win.
So you hit the nail on the head, and I knew you would be the perfect first guest because that's leadership and love, right? That's that love and that emotion. And I had a smile because I did what you just said. I went into the community, I volunteered, but I volunteered exactly the same way you said. I volunteered where my heart was at, right?
Yes.
And so, and to your point, now I'm with people that see my heart, that
Yes.
love that love I have for my children, that love I have for my clients, that passion I have for my industry. And at that point, that message rings true, and they feel you. So my next question for you would be, the next piece of this is a lot of small businesses aren't familiar, and I spell it unique as YOU with the NIQUE. What's your advice for small businesses to find their unique selling proposition, value add? There's a bunch of different names you can call it, but it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for small businesses to put that love in that unique selling proposition to separate them from the herd?
That is a complex question. Although an easy question to ask, it is difficult to find because here's the tricky part. I've read several books on distinguishing yourself, separating yourself, what makes you different. And what's very interesting to find is what you as a shop owner or manager think makes your shop different. If other people also can say it, it doesn't differentiate you from others. If you can say, well, I'm different as a shop because we give the best customer service, guess what? Every shop thinks they give the best customer service. If you as a shop thinks, well, we do the best work, well, guess what? Every other shop thinks they do the best work. So you have to, and again, this is what I always recommend, take your key leaders, even your team, your whole team, and sit them down. This is a great way to build up that trust and that buy-in from your collective business, from all of the people in your business, is to do meetings like this to get feedback. Because, as my friend Drew would love to say, feed forward, because it's great to hear from others that are outside of your perspective, because we can only see life through our lens. And when we bring in other people in our space, in our shop, it brings so many great ideas to the table. So I say this is a great team building exercise to bring everybody together and brainstorm what makes us different. And then go through and have everybody say something and write them all up on the board. And then go back through and say, okay, of all the shops that are around here, do any of them, whether they do it or not, do they claim to also provide these things? And go through and mark them all off if anybody else is saying it. And probably at the end of the list, you might end up with a big fat goose egg. You might have zero things that actually are differentiating you. So now the question becomes, okay, then what really does differentiate us? And let the brainstorming begin. What are we going to do? If we're not doing anything right now that really differentiates us, what are we going to do? Or what is it? It makes you have to dig deeper that what truly makes us different than everybody else. Maybe it's what can we do? Because if you can't make yourself different, then why does somebody choose you? So potentially so I had one shop, they had one parking space and it was reserved for the appointments. They were smaller shops. They didn't have a ton of appointments throughout the day. And a half hour before each appointment, they would go up and write, it was like a whiteboard, and it would say reserved for Mrs. Jane Smith. And so when Jane Smith Mrs. Smith came into the driveway, she'd look around and boop, she'd see a parking spot with her name on it for her appointment that day. How special would that make her feel? So they thought, we want to go that extra mile and make our people feel special because it's about that emotional piece. What can we do to separate ourselves from the bazillion other body shops out here? And that was their thing. That was their thing. We make people, you are special. Our customers are special. We go above and beyond. And so if that's their motto, that's their slogan, how are they reflecting that? So that's the way they did it. Another shop had a tray of like specialty baked goods. And when the guests would come in to sign the paperwork, they would have the guests sit down rather than the guests going and serving themselves, like most shops where they'll just go grab a water or go get a coffee. Somebody from the team would actually come around and offer them a platter of baked goods, a napkin, get their coffee for them, get their tea for them. That was a differentiator because who else is doing it? So things like this, but the ideas for these kinds of things don't usually happen in a silo with one person. This is usually a brainstorming effort to create and think of these amazing things. And what one person thinks of sparks somebody else's creativity. And then that sparks that creativity. And this is where the beauty happens.
You've dropped a bunch of golden nuggets in that response. And one of them is, and the reason why I was like cheering for those that are just listening is because I do a lot of networking. I teach people how to network. And I think body shop owners specifically aren't very good at networking and they're not very good at communicating. And
Yep.
and I tell people, we've been in business 25 years is just trash talking. And if you're in a room with another body shop owner at a networking event, they can stand up and say, I've been in business 50 years and now you're the chucklehead who doesn't have as much experience. Literally, right? And so
Right.
so you're really differentiating yourself on literally just trash talking because anybody in the room can up the ante instantly. You
Right.
can go from great client service to extraordinary client care. And again, it's just
Mm,
trash talking. And
mm,
at the end of the day, I think one of the things that I've learned, especially in today's world with AI, is go ask AI for your specific market, and we could talk. You and I could do this for
mm.
all day, right?
Yeah.
Because that target market has a need. When
Yes.
I'd like you to talk a little bit about because you just touched on something else in there as well. I'd like you to talk about leadership and love in being open to the ideas. I've come to
Mm,
understand nobody, you, me, anybody else, builds anything great in that silo,
yep.
right? All by herself. It's a team. So what are your thoughts or suggestions for our listeners on how could they lead their team in a way that's going to be with love to get to this common goal, the vision of the company?
There's a few things, and it starts with us as the leaders and managers that we have to be leading from a place of love in order to lead our team in love. We can't say it and not be living it because they're going to feel it. Nothing genuine is going to happen. And we truly are leading by example. I believe leadership is living by example. And we can't live by example if it's not authentic and actually happening. So, my suggestion would be for the leaders of the team to, and I know this is going to be totally outside the box for most people, but it's effective. I've studied neuroscience in regards to the way that we get in creative spaces, and that is to get out of your office. Get away from your office, go take some time on your own, go be, whether that is go on a walk, that means go sit in a quiet, dark corner. Like I have my prayer closet where I can go in and to a room and it's quiet and I can be and I can put on music. We have to separate ourselves from the noise to let the creative process start so that our frontal lobe will actually activate to get creative and that we can unlock then that love space, that heart space to be creative and start to overflow. If we're not giving ourselves the space to be in that, it's very difficult because we live in such a constricted society and business in our daily lives is so tight, it's so stressful, it's anxiety filled when we're doing all the things and we've got deadlines. You have to give your space to step away. So I would say first, the challenge would be your team, if you want to do a team meeting, even do it off campus, do it out of your shop in a way, even if it's just for the leaders, take some time to just regenerate and be and let the anxiety flow, let the stress flow, and just get into a calm, quiet state. And that's so difficult for most people, yet so powerful if you allow yourself the space and the time to do it. That ideally would happen. Secondarily, meeting with the team. If you're able to do that team meeting again off campus, go to a local park and do it there. It's interesting to see when you read the studies and you see the science behind it, how people, when they're in their workspace, just naturally have that tightness. There's that natural friction of just being in the workspace of, oh, I got to go do this when I finish up. Oh my gosh, I forgot that part. It's over at the dealership. I got to pick it up. It's difficult because we're in the workspace. That's where we're wired to be working. So if you can do it off site, go to a restaurant, go to a park. If you can't do it at your shop, do it in the conference room. It's better than not doing it at all. But if you can do it off site, they say, scientists say, you will actually have a much stronger, powerful meeting because it gets everybody out of the stress work state. And we're able to be creative. And in creativity, with the mission, we let that love flow that we're talking about. Now, think about how much greater the capacity for creativity can be when you get yourself in that space and you allow that space. But first, you've got to hold that space for your team. If you can't hold that space for your team, then your team won't be able to rise up to it. And they shouldn't be the ones trying to lead you. They most likely won't. They just won't.
You're just on fire, Mickey, because you're absolutely right. You know, one of the things that I've come to realize is you can't give away what you don't have.
Yeah.
So, and that's
Right.
basically what you just said, right? I can't be a loving leader if I'm not loving myself and
Yes.
showing up as love.
Right.
And that takes that time in the quiet. For you, I know you have a strong faith in God,
Yeah.
and I do as well. And I think that that's a big part of, whether it's prayer or meditation. I like to share with people, prayer is us talking to God. Meditation is us shutting up long enough to hear what he's got to
Yes.
say,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And we can't hear the voice. And I believe that we all hear the voice, and whatever it is, God, universe, source, whatever you call it, we hear that in the quiet. And it could
Yes.
be the lyrics of a song. It could be a bumper sticker.
Mm.
It could be something somebody says in a I've had somebody say something in a conversation that I'm not involved in at a networking event across the room, and it's like they had a loudspeaker right into my ear.
Mm.
And I thought,
Wow.
there's my message. And
Yes.
so you've hit on so many powerful things. So I'd like to ask you a question in your life, and I want people to understand this. It's very powerful because what you're talking about, you show up as love everywhere. Everywhere I see you, like at the Collision Cocktail Hour, or on your podcast, on conversations you and I have had offline. I'd like you to tell people how that works for you, because when you're busy being love in one place, does it automatically go everywhere else?
I hope that it's something inside that flows out. And really, for me, it's become a real practice of gratitude. So I start my day out in gratitude. I think it's the biggest thing we can do for ourselves. It's such a blessing to be able to be grateful. So I start out my day. I literally, you can ask my husband, I've been doing it for years. And I'll back up even more. I used to live in a very stressful state, in a very fight or flight state, a lot of anxiety. Not that I wasn't a caring, loving person, but it was trapped because there was so much anxiety going on, so much stress going on, so much pressure I put on myself. And it created a lot of health issues for me, and it got fairly extreme. And I had to take a step back and say, I recognize I'm doing this to myself. There is so much here. Yes, you can take medication and all these other things, but I need to take responsibility for the thoughts that are going on in my mind, for this pattern and this loop that's playing every single day. I'm choosing to put myself in this stress state every day, over and over. And in doing that, I've learned a lot of different things about myself, about the mind and the body, and how it all works together. And it's really brought me into such a closer relationship with the Lord because He's shown me so many things. And it first started with being the second I wake up in the morning, I do not look at my phone. That is the last thing now that I do, because that immediately would put me into that fight or flight stress state. And there I go. I start my day off every morning with I roll out of bed, I go into my prayer closet, I put on some music, and I talk about the things that I'm grateful for. And it can start with as simple as breath in my lungs, eyes that can see, hands that can move, simple, a roof over my head, basic things, and reminding myself how blessed I am every single day. And then it leads me into talking with the Lord, praying with Him, meditating, listening to some music, being very grounded, very calming, and really asking to be able to live like Jesus. I feel like Jesus was the example of leadership and love. And I want to be as much like Jesus and walk like him as I can. And so praying to be able to be as much like I can be like him every day, and knowing that I am nowhere near perfect and he loves me anyway. And so starting my day out with that, and then also being others mindset, being others focused, praying for other people and their needs and things that's going on in their lives, rather than just focusing on myself and this is what's wrong with me and that's what's wrong with me. Focusing on others has really helped me. Those things, just starting out my day in a certain kind of way, has allowed me then, like you were saying, I'm filling up my cup so that I can then now go fill up others and be a light and be a support, because that's what my heart craves. My heart want, I think we're all built to want to help other people. Really, I truly do. That we want to be helpful. We have more joy when we give gifts and we help others and we give an encouraging word. It's such a blessing. I mean, it's such a fulfillment. And you don't have to believe in God to know that. We just know that you do something for somebody else, it just feels good. So I think having that heart posture of giving and pouring into people and feeling like, this is why I'm here, is to help and uplift and encourage. And this is why we live day in and day out. For me, that's how I operate. So then hopefully it flows out. And trust me, your girl's got a little bit of a temper, so it's not perfect all the time.
Well, well, it's funny because to your point, they've done a bunch of research about the power of gratitude,
Absolutely.
the healing properties, and I
Yes.
do the same thing every morning. I write in a journal and I
Oh,
write
yes.
things I'm grateful for, and I think that one of the things that there's there's great power. We live in such luxury. Truly,
Oh,
we
yes.
live in such luxury. And to your point, so this morning I wrote in my gratitude journal, I'm grateful for my warm, comfortable bed. Right?
Yes.
I woke up, it was the temperature outside was 2 degrees.
Wow.
With the wind chill, it was 13 below. And so, right. But I woke up in a warm bed. I had
Yes.
food in the house, all the things that we simply take
Yes.
for granted. And what's it magnifies, right? It starts to magnify
Yes.
all the blessings we have. The second thing I think you
Yes.
touched on again with powerful is the fact that we have the ability to serve others. And when we come from that
Mm,
place of service, it just lights us up, right? It truly
yeah.
lights us up because I believe that's what we're here for too, is to work and partner with people to help those things. I've shared with people
Mm,
that I meditate every day. I pray every morning as
hmm.
well. But
Yeah.
on the rare chance that I don't meditate, it's a completely different day. It's a
Oh,
completely
yeah.
different day. One of the other things I
Yes.
learned that I would like to share with you and the listeners is every prayer should be a prayer of thanksgiving. Dear God, thank you for
Mm-hmm.
this challenge. Dear God, thank you for the
Mm-hmm.
people that are going to help my sick relative. Thank you for, you know what I mean? Because there's so much
Yes.
that can all be prayer of thanksgiving because
Yes.
everything's meant for a blessing of some sort. We just have to be able to
Amen.
step back and see the lesson in it. Because
Right.
if we're busy running in the day to day and thinking, I'm stressed, I got to be here, I got to be there, I got to order the parts, I got to take care, then there's no time and no space, like you said earlier. I could go on, but I want to ask you one last question to kind of close. If there's one thing you'd like to add that we haven't covered around leadership, love, any of those things, what would that be for our audience?
I think a big piece of it, and I was just listening to a song this morning, and it was called Joy. I choose joy. And leading in love is such a joy-filled thing. And my husband and I were just talking about this yesterday. There's so many people filled with angst just drive on the freeway. Go down the
Right.
street. Like people are so anxious. You get frustrated so easily. If you don't start going when that light turns green, you're getting honks and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I
Right.
just went to scratch my neck." Um so it's like I feel like so many people have lost their peace and lost that love and lost that joy. I choose joy. At the end of the day, I think it's important that life is full of choices. So, what are we going to choose? What do you choose today? That's what it comes down to. You can choose to look at your life stressful and anxiety filled, and it could very well be. But you can also choose to look at those stressful things and choose to look at them as the opportunity for what God is building you up to be able to work to and receive in the future. You can choose to look at something in joy, knowing that this is a beautiful day. I got great things coming to me. I choose joy. That song this morning just it brought me to tears because I thought, especially in the season that we're in, we're filming this. I know it's going to release later, but we're in the season of the holiday. And, what more joyful thing as a believer in Christ is Christmas time. And I
Right.
choose joy rather than the anxiety of the stress of the malls and, all the crazy things. I choose joy. And there's so many opportunity in life and in our daily grind to choose stress, to choose frustration, to choose depression. And I know for people that struggle with depression, I have. I know people that struggle with anxiety, I have. And not to say that this is just, well, you're choosing to be that way. You have depression because you're choosing to be that way. At the same time, if we are not choosing to constantly and consistently find the good and find the beauty in things, that's our choice and our life will reflect that. Our energy will reflect that. So take a look and take a focus on what are you choosing today? When something frustrating comes up, how are you going to choose to deal with that thing? Life is choices and I choose joy.
Well, so I have two things I want to share. One of
Yeah.
them is somebody taught, I heard a sermon a long time ago. Joy stood for Jesus, others, yourself. That's the order,
Mm.
and that's the order, right? That'll bring you joy. To your
Yes,
point
love that.
earlier, when you give to others, that giving just makes us joyful. When you start living these things every day, then it just starts to exude out of you. And that choice, I've been depressed as well, and I've been
Mhm.
angry and anxious, and all the things that we all go through. It's the human
Yes.
experience. But at some point, it's like building a muscle. We got to
Yes.
build that muscle to choose joy, right? We got to build
Yes.
that muscle. I believe everything is only one of two emotions, love or fear. And joy's
Mm.
the
Mhm.
love and light of who we all are, right? And
Yes.
we have the power, but it's a muscle. You build that
Yes.
muscle to choose love. You build that muscle to choose joy. And so,
Perfect.
yeah, before, but you were the perfect guest, and I knew you would be because, like I said, you show up as what you're talking about. It just exudes out of you in everything you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and you're right. It didn't just happen. Like I said, years and years of anxiety, years and years of stress, medications, uh, debilitating anxiety. It was day after day after day after day of building the muscle, creating the habits, making the choices day after day to get to the place where now it's reflexive and yet still challenging myself, and I do it every day making the choice. And not that I am perfect by any means. I mean, you'll see me in a parking lot sometimes, come on lady. uh, at the same time, compare me now to where I was before, and those daily choices and the daily discipline, knowing that what I wanted for myself was so much more than what I had at that moment, is life changing, really. And for me, the Lord was at the center of all of that.
So I'd like to. She just dropped another golden nugget. She said daily choices. These are so today we may fail. Tomorrow we've been given a
Yeah.
brand new day. We choose again, we choose again, we just get better. But you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
Micki. It's repeated over and over and over again. And I love your heart. I love you. I love you. You're just
Well,
amazing because you and I want everybody to take note on this is wherever you're at in your life now, wherever your business is at, you have the ability to move it. You have the ability to
yes.
move the needle. And that's
Yes.
done every day, even if it's a little bit every day, we can move the needle.
Yes.
And your life is a living example of that. So before we call it a day, if somebody wants to reach out to you for some consulting or some training for their staff and that kind of stuff, or marketing for
Mhm.
their company, how can they get a hold of you, Micki?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, they can email me at Micki@MickiWoodsMarketing.com. So you can email me. You can also go to my website and there's a calendar that you can book on, and you can go to collisioncentermarketing.com. And like I said, then you can just book an appointment, initial consultation. We'll have a call and just discuss whatever your needs are, whatever it may be. If you just want some free advice, we can do that too. So try to make it easy for you.
Well, there you go. Please feel free to reach out to her. And I love Micki, I love you because you showed up and she just said something. I can tell you that if you listening to this and you don't reach out to her for some of that free advice, then you're
Mm,
leaving the money on the table.
mm,
And she
yeah.
just gave you an offer that she's going to give you free advice. If you don't make that phone call and say, hey, and show up with the one thing and say, hey, Micki, what's the one thing I could do to move the needle in my marketing, in my business, in my personal life, in how I love, how my relationship with God. And because she just offered that free advice. And so
Yeah.
again, you're going to leave money on the table if you don't make that phone call. Again, that's Micki Woods, Mickiwoods. Micki, from the bottom of my heart, I love you and thank you so
Oh,
much. You made
I
this
love you,
so
Louie.
easy. Yeah, it was.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been so fun. It's always so fun to talk with you. We always have such a good time.
We do.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.